You're watching the Syndicate live stream.
It's 11:59 on Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall.
We'll do it live. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
All right, welcome to the live stream. We've got Drew from the Terminal Element and Jared from 2 Alpha Solutions. And for those watching who are active on amateur radio, you can send us your comments or questions via JSA call. I guess we're going to do 20 meters today, so on 14.078 megahertz. And you can send those comments or questions to callsigngroup@TCS. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it going?
So good. We're doing this on a Sunday, I guess. Let's see here. You've got a fan already. Hey, Jared.
I see that. I just go back.
Welcome. Let's see. Let me just throw up our banner so we can show the 20 meters and the JSA call information. And let's see. You've got another one, SOS, Wish Outdoors and Survival. What's up, Jared? Welcome.
Wow.
Indeed.
You brought all your friends.
I did, I guess so.
So anyway, let me jump into it. So on this episode, we're going to discuss communications capabilities we use in our daily lives and where we see room for improvement, as well as backup power options for home and on the go. We're also going to cover some current events, such as how 59% of Americans don't have enough savings for a $1,000 emergency, the growing conflict on our southern border, and Doge. So those will be all the things that we get into. But I guess a topic, Drew, that you wanted to cover are what communications capabilities we take with us as we go about our daily lives. And I guess for you, those of you in the chat, let us know what you use every day. So, Drew, I guess we'll start with you. What do you use on a daily basis, and where do you see room for improvement with your gear?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because it seems like we see all of these, we see a lot of talk about this online and the MCOM and the emergency, but I really wonder how many people actually bring a radio with them and put it in their backpack, or if that's just something they leave at home for yakking with the boys in the evenings on the radio, on the HF. And I'm just kind of curious to hear from our viewers what type of stuff you carry with you on a daily basis, what type of plans you have for communicating with your family, because I think right now is the time that we need to be planning for how we communicate with people when there is an emergency, or even just a disruption in the cell phone grid. Because I don't know about you guys, but around here, or I live in North Idaho, cell phone grid goes down all the time. Or even if it isn't completely out, you can have severely degraded service where it might take minutes for even a text message to go out. So I just am really curious to hear from people what they do. I always have some sort of radio with me, usually a VHF radio. I also have this digital system I made with my family. You can check out on my channel. It's a tutorial for how I set that up. And for use with kids, I always make sure I've got a couple GMRS radios with me. They seem to be not only just really good training radios, but also really functional. So.
Well, while we wait and see if anyone in the chat chimes in, how about you, Jared? What do you usually take with you every day?
Well, being that my life, I pretty much live in my truck. I always have my sidearm on me. I have a SIG 365. I don't always carry it on my person because I can't work with it on my person, but it's always in the truck. And if I go into a store somewhere, I put it on. Radio wise, I have a mobile mounted in the truck. It's a quad band. The Yaesu 8900. That right? I think so. Quad band, whatever it is, they don't make it anymore. Usually have some kind of a portable with me, either one of my TYTs or a Motorola. But then I also carry a lot of water in the truck with me too. I probably have 4, maybe 5 gallons of water in the truck at any time. Because it's not just me, it's Yoda that's with me too.
Right.
So we're stuck somewhere, I need to be able to feed and water him as well. So I always carry food for him, food for me, a couple MREs, carry some dry kibble for him that I vacuum seal using one of those food saver vacuum seal systems.
Mm-hmm.
I put 1 cup in a food saver bag and vacuum seal it, and I carry 5 or 6 bags of that for him, and plus some wet food, because if we're out somewhere, he doesn't always like to eat. He's not a big eater anyhow, but I gotta have something for him, so I entice him with the wet food.
Do you have to carry multiple spare tires for when that massive dog of yours chews them off of your truck?
I have 1 spare tire.
Oh, I don't know if that's enough.
1 spare tire. So if I do get a flat tire, if I get 2 flat tires on the back of the truck, on the back, because it's a dually, there's 2 wheels on either side. I can
built-in spares.
Yeah, I can take one of them off and just put the spare on there and run 1 tire on one side. I can do that. So I always have blankets and a change of clothes, extra socks, food, water, which I mentioned. I have 3 bottles of propane back there, so I could always cook food if I needed to in my forge. Not that I'm going to cook it in the forge, but I can set something up where I can cook on there or get some heat, because it'll get pretty warm.
Do you carry extra handhelds with you in your truck in case you got to coordinate with somebody who you're with?
Yeah, I usually have 2.
The GMRS or VHF, or what do you do?
I either have the 2. I have the TYT radios, which are
Dual bands.
Dual band, and then if I have the Motorola's, those are GMRS, and they're all programmed just strictly for GMRS UHF.
I don't understand the rivalry between ham radio and GMRS. They're both great. Why hate on one or the other?
Everybody hates on each other.
There's no point. It's a tool for the right job. Drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. There does seem to be some sort of like rivalry between the two. I didn't really understand that, because I have both. I have, my GMRS radios and my ham gear, and I don't know, as far as like ED, like everyday carry, like as far as a radio is concerned, I rotate quite a bit. I have my DMR, my TYT, MD UV 390 plus. I've been kind of carrying that one quite a bit lately. I have my Kenwood D75, but that usually just kind of sits on my desk. I don't want to ruin that one. And then
is that the triple band APRS one that?
Yeah, that one's pretty cool. I'm still kind of digging into just everything and like how it works and stuff. It's got GPS.
Is that the one that has 1296, or is it 220?
I know it's got 220. And that's the one we were talking about the other day that we were talking about the mod for that. Okay. But no, that one's, and I've also got a Yaesu VX6 that I use quite a bit, and then a FT60. So I rotate my gear quite a bit. It really kind of depends on what I'm doing. If I'm just messing around town, I'll probably take my DMR with me. But for the other stuff, I usually take that in the field. I've also kind of got everything set up so I can switch. I like radios with the Kenwood plugs, so I like to be able to switch out all my gear with my electronic ears when I go shooting. So that's pretty helpful. And as far as a pistol, I usually I rotate those too. I usually carry a Glock 19 or I have a revolver, got a 38, and a CZ 75 compact. That one's pretty cool. I like that one. But usually that's kind of what I roll with. And as far as all the gear and stuff, I don't have as much in my vehicle as Jared does. But you make a good point about, having food for like your dogs, because I got a couple of big dogs, and if I go somewhere with them, then I need to make sure that they're fed and watered and taken care of. I've also got, first aid kits for them too. I've probably tried to learn more about first aid for animals than I have for myself. So shame on me, I guess. But
There's a lot of
yeah,
crossover.
there is.
It's
Yeah.
a transferable skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, they even have like quick clot for dogs. So like if they like rip a nail or something, they've got quick clot that you can put on their nails and stuff. That's actually, I've used that out in the field a couple of times, had a couple of pups rip a nail before. So
The only
but yeah.
difference is I can never remember if my nose is supposed to be wet or the dog's. That one baffles me. I can't ever keep that straight.
And there's crossover there, right?
They can go either way, Drew.
I guess this kind of segues though into I guess I don't really, and also, as far as GMRS stuff, I dabble in that quite a bit too. And in fact, I've got both a 2-meter and a GMRS repeater in my garage. So, I do both. I don't quite understand the rivalry. They are just tools, like you said, Drew, but,
especially with kids, especially like when you got your family and your kids aren't going to go past the ham test, like little kids, maybe older kids, but
one of the things that I've heard people complain about, and I don't know, maybe this is like a ham culture thing or whatever, but we don't have to get into all that because we got other shit to talk about. But I've heard people complain that some of the ham guys will kind of like get on the GMRS repeaters and start kind of critiquing their etiquette on air. And
well, okay, I think where are you going to go in life to get away from that?
I think that's probably part of the reason for the rivalry. What's that, Jared?
Drew asked where you're gonna go to get away from that, and I said, well, you're not going to be on the radio or the internet if you want to get away from it.
Reddit.
You can't go
in all the Reddit forums. They're super nice there. They're
welcoming. You can't go to church. You can't go to church without encountering jerks. So there's there's just nowhere to get away from that.
That's true. I agree. It's really anywhere you go. You could say the same thing about like gun culture. Like there's people that will go after you for the kind of, I'm the Glock that I mentioned that I carry. I'm sure someone hates Glocks out there. It never ends. But
can I take us on a tangent?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I just encountered a really interesting cultural difference between here, America, and Germany. So there's a channel I follow is by the Tactical Dad, very popular channel in German, but you can flip on the subtitles and get it in English. And he posted something about how horrible of a design Glock is. It's unsafe. No one should own one because you have to pull the trigger in order to disassemble the slide. And he alluded to being involved in some sort of ND. He didn't call it an ND, and they blamed that on this alleged design flaw of the Glock, where you have to pull the trigger to release that striker tension. And so I started talking with some of the commenters on there. Most Germans speak English, and so I was just talking to them like, this is a really dangerous attitude. You can't be blaming the gun for that. And they're just dead set on that's the gun problem. It should have been manufactured more safely. And here we would say, well, why the hell was that thing ever pointed at your leg, right? That should never have been pointed ever at anything that you didn't want to kill. So, and even then, even if you did have a little, like on the XDM, there's a little lever that you slide and then you can disassemble it and you don't have to pull the trigger. You still have to pull that trigger at some point, because any person who wants to get competent or maintain proficiency with a pistol has to dry fire a lot. Unless you're independently wealthy, but even still, you should be dry firing. And so you're never going to get away from having to do some trigger pull work. You should just not be pointing it at your nuts and your leg and other people while you're doing it, right? So I found that fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
That is interesting.
You brought up Glock, so I brought it to mind.
I like Glocks. I think they're great firearms. I've knock on wood, I've never had a problem with one. I mean, well,
you probably don't point it at your leg when you're, clearing the chamber. You probably
no. no, or animals or anything that I don't
Right.
want to. Yeah.
Unless you're an ATF guy, then you can shoot dogs.
Just had to go there, didn't you?
Of course.
Well, I guess we can. I guess we can now that they got rid of the top lawyer for the ATF, and Kash Patel's apparently going to take over. So
That's
In the
so cool.
FBI.
yeah, so he's going to be FBI director, and supposedly that's at least I saw an AP article last night because I was over on Corsair Trainers live stream, and they were kind of talking about that. So I didn't come up with this myself, but someone had mentioned in his chat that Kash Patel was taking over, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess he's really going to be. They're expecting that he's going to be appointed as the ATF director, like sometime next week. And further down in the article, it mentioned that they that they fired their top law enforcement lawyer. And what they're going to try and do is make them focus more on going after, like, I guess, the immigration issue versus targeting gun owners, which that's pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that would worry me about this would be is if this is a precursor to some sort of plan to consolidate those agencies. I think that would be a terrible idea. That would be a terrible day for gun owners.
They did it with Homeland Security, though. I mean,
yeah, but what I'm talking about is the ATF is relatively small and underfunded compared to the FBI. If you want to see harassment of law-abiding gun owners rocket into the stratosphere, that's how you do it. You abolish the ATF and hand all of those duties over and money over to the FBI. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was planning on doing that. Like, you were crazy. You should do nothing if that's your plan.
And you can have different divisions in the FBI take care of what the ATF is doing now.
mm-hmm.
I don't know what does the ATF do for us? They make sure liquor is taxed and like people aren't selling Lucy cigarettes and
our lives miserable
and harass the shit out of you.
And stuff.
You're the enemy of America because you're exercising our heritage right to keep and bear arms.
Well, they issued decrees. Decrees. Wow, words are fucking hard today for me. Apparently,
capricious.
Good Lord.
Decrees.
But they issue decrees about firearms and act as if it's the law and
roll over on it next week.
Yeah, pretty much.
So frustrating.
Hopefully, a lot of that shit goes away.
I think people are sick of just all of the bureaucracy. It's kind of overwhelming. I don't know if this is true, and I almost don't want to say it out loud because I want it to come true. But because they were talking about doing the external revenue service and basically having tariffs essentially pay for a lot of things that you would collect taxes for, and then getting rid of the IRS. And I'm kind of on board with that. I understand that the IRS. I'm always on the fence about getting rid of things completely because they were created for a purpose. It wasn't just bureaucracy. But I think if it's no longer useful and it just makes people's lives more miserable than it improves anything, then yeah, I could see getting rid of it. But I don't know.
Would our lives be worse than they are now?
No,
I don't know.
Well, and we're going to get into that in a minute, because one of the topics will be essentially, some of the Doge stuff and what they're uncovering. And I have a list of stuff that I will, share with everyone in a minute, just that I kind of researched of all the stuff that they're, finding, fraud, waste, and abuse. But it's like, they just rack up a massive national debt, to the tune of $35 trillion or whatever it is, and harass everyone else over if you send your friend $600, it's pretty crazy. But before we get into all that, I guess we could kind of segue from our EDC radio topic into our next one, which is I think you wanted to talk about backup power, Drew, and I guess what backup power options you guys have either at home or that you carry with you. So each of you mentioned, carrying some HTs, stuff like that. I assume your question is, or your reason for bringing this up is, how do you kind of charge that stuff in the field and keep it going should you not have grid power, I guess? Or do you want to kind of expand on that, Drew?
Sure. Yeah. So my plan right now doesn't involve solar. And I'm just curious how many people out there are really effective with solar. It seems like such a massive investment to get started. And in many parts of the country, the sun just doesn't shine consistently enough to warrant that expense. So what I've done instead, it just makes sense at my level. I just got a generator. So my generator, I plumb it in, I backfeed my panel with an interlock for safety. And then I'm able to afford lots of storage for fuel with all the savings from not spending a bunch of money on solar. And it's a little bit easier to justify rather than a big expense for something that might not even really work when I need it. But I definitely see the downside of that being the longevity of that. And in a really extended grid down situation, I'm going to run out at some point. So that's just something that was on my mind. I was curious if you guys incorporate solar into your plans. A lot of times when I'm mobile, I will be near a vehicle, and so I make sure that I have chargers for my various batteries and things that can just charge off of the 12-volt cigarette lighter plugs. So that's where I'm at right now. And have you guys taken the step into solar? I'm just curious about it.
Jared, what do you do?
So I would like to do solar, but I think it's cost prohibitive. We do have a backup generator for the house. It'll run the entire house with everything. It's like a 20 kilovolt generator, but it does not feed my shop. The way, because that's where I'm at now, is where my office is and my ham shack is and everything. So the way it's wired, the shop power comes off right off the back of the meter, the power meter, and is not really fed from internally on the house. So if we lose power here, I don't have any power out here in the shop. I could get some car batteries and hook them up if I really wanted to get on the radio and use the radios for something. But if it's not for that, I'm kind of dead in the water for radios. Other than
what are
my mobile unit.
What are those powered with now? Is that off of grid power?
What's that?
Are you in your shop right now?
Yeah, this is all grid power.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, but even for less than the cost of setting up solar in your shop, you still could probably just get some deep cycle batteries, even AGMs or lead acids, and probably do pretty good.
Yeah, I can get some deep cycles or some of those big lithium ion batteries.
Price is coming down on those. That's kind of nice.
A little bit, yeah. What I like about the TYT radios, and it's not just specific for them, is that if I need to charge one of those radios, I can do it with the USB-C. I don't have to have a charging cradle for it, so I can charge it in the truck or whatever. So I'm not going to be completely without comms. But yeah, we usually have, I don't know, about 50 gallons worth of gasoline here for the generator at any given time. I use it for the mowers and all the power equipment throughout the summer, so it's cycled throughout the year.
You say you have a 20 kilowatt generator? That's massive.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a portable one. I have to take it outside and start it up. It's got a push button start, so I don't have to sit there and pull start it. And there's the interlock on the breaker panel, and there's a plug for it on the outside of the house. So it's a bit of a process to get it going, but it's relatively simple.
What about you, Terrence? Have you taken the plunge into solar?
Yeah, not for my home. I had thought about it, but if I do it for my house, I want to be able to run things if the grid goes down. And but as far as solar, like I have it, yeah, but I'm actually looking at them right now. I've got quite a few just portable solar panels laying around the garage. And then, you can't see it. I've got basically like 10 batteries set up on a cart, and they're all wired.
Wow.
And they're all wired in parallel together. And then That's basically just to keep like my computers charged, stuff like that, because we have some pretty interesting weather in northern Nevada. So sometimes the power will go out during snowstorm or whatever. And even last week we had some power outages, and I used it quite a bit. So to charge my computers, my phone, radios, just pretty much anything else. I've got that, and then I have 3 generators. I could keep my deep freezer, fridge going. And then as far as just kind of like when I take stuff out in the field, I am into the portable solar panels. So I've got all of my stuff kind of set up for that. So you mentioned, Jared, like radios with a cradle to charge and stuff like that. I can't stand that. Like it has to either have like a little DC input or USB, or I'm probably not going to buy it. But
I like cradle chargers, but they're kind of obsolete at this point.
They are, yeah.
Especially whenever you have the capability of making a battery that has a USB plug in the back of it, and you can just charge it that way.
But and this rant is going somewhere. Basically, the reason I'm telling you all this is that it's more of kind of like just my general philosophy of I like to kind of have layers of things. So I like to have layers of backup power. That includes solar. That includes generator power. And I kind of do the same thing that you do, Jared. I've got extra gas stored for everything that I cycle through, when I mow the lawn or whatever it is, so it doesn't get stale. I also use some products just to kind of stabilize the gas for long-term storage. I've also got several boxes that I've built that have smaller batteries in them inside, basically like Pelican cases, like you'd find it, like the knockoff ones you find at like Harbor Freight. And I've built a few of those to keep things charged. But same thing with radios. I like to have several different options. I like to have GMRS, 2 meter, CB, all that stuff. So I don't know. It's just kind of a little bit of a larger philosophy that I have with my gear.
Can you dive into more detail about your system? So you described a cart with like 10 12 volt batteries on it.
Yeah,
and
those aren't car batteries. Those are specifically solar batteries. That I think those also came from Harbor Freight. Actually, if you go to Harbor Freight, they have like a whole solar section. So they've got the panels. They've got basically like this disc that you can plug several panels into, and then that goes to your like charge controller, and then out to your batteries. But yeah, no, I've got that. I originally wanted to have it all the batteries set up to run my repeaters, and then I was like, well, having the repeaters going aren't really that important for me. I don't really have anyone to talk to anyway. So I was going to ask you guys, when you were talking about all your radio EDC stuff, like who do you talk to? Like, is it family? I assume, you
Family.
guys have certain friends and family that, you're specifically interested in talking to should you need to, in an emergency.
Family.
I don't
Family
really
is
hardly
primarily.
talk to anybody on the radio when I'm in the truck driving. I
You don't?
hardly ever even turn it on.
Oh, really?
No. Once in a while. But I don't. I have my couple friends that are local down here, but I work an hour and a half, 2 hours north of here.
Right.
I mean, I could get a message back home if I needed to, I'm sure.
Right.
But other than that, I don't hardly ever turn the radio on in the truck.
I like to have, I have a CB in my Jeep, but it's mostly for monitoring. I haven't talked to anyone on a CB in a very long time, but I like to have it there just for monitoring. I've got my Yaesu 891. I've got that set up just to monitor HF stuff in my Jeep as well. But yeah, I guess I kind of do the same. I guess I don't really talk to that many people anymore. So
Maintaining connectivity with my family is massive for me, and so I've got that set up. For friends, I know they do some GMRS stuff, and I've set up a GMRS repeater, and I think they need to do a little bit more investment into some external antennas for their
Right.
homes in order to reach mine, but they haven't prioritized yet, and that's totally fine. They haven't prioritized that yet, the connectivity between our friends group, and I'm just, ready for whenever they decide that that's a priority. I know a lot of people have, stuff going on right now that demands funds and time, and that's not always a priority for everybody, but
Yeah.
primarily family. I also maintain the ability to connect with work over the public safety frequencies. For anybody who's watching and isn't aware of my channel, I'm a paramedic, so I work in a rural area, and resources can be depleted very quickly. So if there is a massive emergency, I can be monitoring and maybe even connect with them over the radio if the cell phones are not working. It's also great to be able to just monitor what's going on around you, being able to listen to public safety.
Yeah. I mean, I think during an emergency, unless you're in like Aries or races or whatever those programs are, like, unless you're specifically set up to pass traffic during an emergency, I mean, you're mostly going to be monitoring and, and I realize that, I think when a lot of people get into radio, they're like, well, what am I going to use it for? And it's like, well, to monitor the, what's going on around you. I have pretty much all my stuff set up for that. I've got it. It's mostly at this point in my life, this life stage, it's camping, hiking, especially if I go out hiking and I break my ankle, I can at least hit one of the repeaters nearby and get help if I can't call someone on my cell phone, which is going to be my first communications piece of equipment. But I guess if I had to, and it was like some weird dire situation and I had to like pass out radios to my neighbors in a pinch, I could. I've got my stuff set up for that. So
awesome.
And the backup power to charge everything, and probably set up like a mobile repeater or something. But I mean, the chances of that happening, unless there's like some real major natural disaster or something, I don't know that would necessarily happen. Maybe if I lived in like an area where there were a lot of tornadoes, like Tornado Alley in like Oklahoma and Texas, or maybe on the Gulf of America where they have a lot of hurricanes. But
well, better to have and not need, right? Rather than get into a really uncomfortable, crappy situation, and now you're scrambling to do the time and research, and then come up with the funds to make that investment.
And that's why like you were saying, you don't really get the rivalry between GMRS and ham radio and stuff, and I don't really either, because they're all just tools, and I've got enough tools to kind of hand out to my neighbors and friends and family and stuff if I needed to, and that's really just to keep everyone communicating if needed. But I don't know. I guess I kind of started out like everybody else, where I was like, this is going to go on my plate carrier and I'm going to need this for something, but probably not.
So with your battery card, I apologize. I'm fascinated by this concept. So I imagine if you need to charge them, you wheel them out of your garage, and then you've got your portable solar panels or your Harbor Freight panels, and you set those up, and then you just charge it outside, just right outside your house, or.
Oh, I can put the panels outside of my my door here. There's a door to my right, and basically I can just connect those to the cart. I don't have to take the cart outside. So
one of the things when I was reading into this is that line losses are a massive problem if you've got just your panels at 18, like in parallel at 18 watts or something like that. So, or 18 volts. I apologize. And so, I was just curious. This sounds like if you were able to move that outside or something like that, then your wire from your panel to your battery bank or to your charge controller wouldn't necessarily need to be so long as to have to suffer line losses or have to buy
snowing outside. I don't want to. Well, I guess if it's snowing outside, maybe I'm not going to get full the full power of the sun, but you're going to get something.
Sure.
even if it's just kind of trickle charging. So I don't know. I guess that's really a weather dependent situation.
How long is your wire run?
I don't know. I think on these panels, probably like 10 feet.
Okay, so that's probably not that bad for line losses.
Well, that's what I'm
at
saying.
12
The
volts.
door's like right out here to my right, so it'd be pretty easy for me to set those up and just connect them to the cart right here.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Well, let's see. I guess we could move on to our next topic. Give me 1 second. Let me just share my screen here. So basically, on this one, in a recent Zero Hedge article, which I'm sharing right now, 59% of Americans aren't in a position to use their savings to pay for a major unexpected expense, such as $1,000 for like an emergency room visit or a car repair. And apparently that's up from like 56% from last year. I think that references it in the article, but that's a lot of Americans who are struggling financially, 56%. And that obviously impacts one's ability to not only build a savings account, but also set money aside to prepare for things like natural disasters, like we're talking about. But I don't know. I mean, if you're in that situation and you're someone that does want to kind of get into, preparedness, how do you go about that if you can't quite afford it?
Well, so many people just live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was kind of having a debate with someone recently about the difference between, like, I used to live in California, and I was talking about just the kind of the cost of living, and they were mentioning, well, the cost of goods and things are probably pretty relative, but the thing that's not is the cost of like housing. You're spending quite a bit of your paycheck every year paying for rent, like $2,000 on like a studio apartment or something. And I could see how that would really disrupt your ability to prepare and get into comms or firearms, prepping food, whatever it may be.
Well, when
that
you give
basic
30%
savings,
of your gross pay to the federal government every year, it doesn't help.
100%. So I could totally understand this being an issue for a single parent who is at a low income job and doesn't really have a way to go and earn more money, and they're paying a crazy amount on rent and a car loan and perhaps student loans because they were sold a lie about university education and how that would somehow make you lots more money just magically. But that article said 59% of Americans, so the majority of Americans, don't have $1,000, which is a diminishing amount relative to the actual cost of things every year. And so that doesn't tell me that. I would just be very surprised if that's people can't afford it versus people just too undisciplined to even save that relatively small amount.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because in a minute we'll talk about Doge and that, I guess, $5,000 refund that they were talking about giving people, and I guess that would come from the savings from cutting some of these programs that we don't really need or sending money overseas to people that don't need it. And on the news, I think on MSNBC, they were actually poo-pooing that proposal. They were basically saying, well, what's $5,000 going to do for anybody? And it's like, well, when over half the country can't save $1,000, probably quite a bit. I guess it depends on what you do with it, but.
But those are the same people that whenever you get a stimulus check for $500 are like, they're all about it.
Well, that happened during COVID.
Right.
There were a lot of people that, spent their stimulus checks on all kinds of things. So probably not things that, were beneficial to them. But, I guess people bought a lot of toilet paper.
I haven't read an analysis of what that money was spent on. I'd be really curious. Was a lot of that sacked away, or was it spent on liquor? And I recall back from when I was in Hurricane Katrina, they were giving out, assistance checks. It wasn't huge, but somebody did a study on what that money was spent on, because they were giving people cards and you could see what that was spent on. There was like so many bottles of Cristal. Some people used it to pay in part for sex change surgeries. It went to crazy stuff and not necessity. So I would just be really curious where all that stimulus money went in general, and that was paid out in America during the last 5 years.
I don't know. I'm sure it's probably on a myriad of things.
I'm sure 90% of it was pissed away.
Probably. Yeah.
I could believe that.
I could see that. I could see people, spending it on all kinds of things that probably don't help them. But I guess that kind of segues into the whole Doge thing. And we'll get into, I'll mention some of it's a little bit of a list. When I started looking at the list of things that Doge has been posting online, it's pretty lengthy. So this isn't the entire list of stuff that they've posted the last few weeks. It's just kind of highlighting where some of our tax money has gone. But this one was recently, the White House had posted some examples of waste, fraud, and abuse that Doge had uncovered. So, you've got $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and businesses communities, $70,000 for production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $2.5 million for electric vehicles for Vietnam, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32K for a transgender comic book in Peru. Let's see, we've also got a couple million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. Let's see, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. Hundreds of thousands for nonprofit linked to designated terrorist organizations. And let's see, EcoHealth Alliance, they received several million, which involved research at the Wuhan lab. Let's see, hundreds of thousands for meals for Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Funding to print personalized contraceptive birth control devices in developing countries. And let's see, hundreds of $1 million to fund, I guess, irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation and heroin production in Afghanistan, benefiting the Taliban. But wait, there's more.
Oh, you don't say.
This is from Doge. So we'll just rattle off some of these. $10 million for Mozambique voluntary medical male circumcision, $40 million for gender equality and women empowerment hub, $486 million to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, including $22 million for inclusive and participatory political process in Moldova and $21 million for voter turnout in India. I don't even know what the hell those are for.
Sounds like voter influence or election influence to me.
$486 million. Like, they give it these really just vague titles, but what are you doing with that money?
This is insane.
Let's see. $29 million to strengthening political landscape in Bangladesh, $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia, $2.5 million for inclusive democracies in Southern Africa, and $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. And yeah, there's still a little bit more. Whoops, let's see here. Yeah, that's the one that I want. So this article talks about
billion.
Yeah, 1.9 billion was misplaced by the Biden administration, and I think what is happening here is what the whole Doge thing is bringing into focus is how perilous our financial situations become. And, this is how our national debt has reached $36 trillion.
It's over 100% of our GDP.
That's insane. Like just the things that we just, and like I said, that's not everything that they've uncovered. They're finding stuff daily, basically, and posting it. And you've got, for whatever reason, well, I know the reason, and so do you, but politicians who are pretty pissed off that they're auditing all of these agencies. But what I don't get,
their own pockets with it.
well, what I don't get are people who are not politicians, that are just citizens that are getting taxed, and this is their money, getting, protesting because Elon Musk is helping Donald Trump audit these people. And it's like, they should be audited. This is absolutely insane. Like, people should be pissed off about this. Like, if this doesn't make you mad, something's wrong with you, I think. Because, I mean, they've just been robbing us blind for decades. And it's all out in the public. Like, like we've known about this kind of stuff, this sort of fraud, waste, and abuse for years. But usually it only gets brought up in terms of like one or two, like, pork project that, some politician tries to bake in some bill. When you actually look at the totality of it, it's pretty serious. I don't know. What do you guys think about this
TV show? I think it was a series, The West Wing.
Mm-hmm.
I never watched it.
And I didn't watch it until later when it was out on DVD. But I don't remember what episode it was or anything. But there was an episode where they were meeting with all these groups of people with their own interests, and they were just handing money out to them. They would go into the White House and ask for money to fund a certain project. And I just thought it was interesting then, and it's the same thing. They still do it now. They do it through legislation, through laws and bills.
Yeah, but they're stealing from us. They're stealing our money.
Yeah.
And they're giving it to, they're spending it on just bullshit.
And I'm sure
like the things that we just went through,
have some kind of discretionary account where they can just pass out money to whoever they want to. There has to be a discretionary account.
There's no way that there isn't money laundering or quid pro quo or something happening.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's no way you send, what was it, $2 million to Guatemala for a trans opera? Is that what I read?
Yeah, I'd have to go back, but it was like a transgendered opera.
Yeah.
Which
what opera
again,
costs $2 million?
Well, they're probably not spending that money on what they're saying. It's probably getting, like you said, funneled to other things. It's probably, they're diverting it.
CIA or... I mean, even if we were to all agree that, yes, this is a worthy cause, we should fund this transgender opera, just for argument's sake. $2 million? This is
$2,000.
Extra layers of insanity on top of that. Pay for your own transgender opera. This is crazy. It's just crazy. It's unfathomable.
But the thing about all this, like I said, this isn't even all of it. This is just like a tip of the iceberg. I mean, this isn't. Trump's only been in office for like a month, and I know the stuff they're finding out already.
Doe just made a couple mistakes, and those have become wonderful red herrings to attack them. That, you're not actually finding waste. No, there's no way all of that is wrong, though. I understand some mistakes. People are human. But this is crazy.
Again, like we were talking about with like getting rid of certain federal agencies and stuff like that. And, I understand you probably need to be cautious about, just axing things before, you really weigh like their purpose and if they're effective or not, or if they just need to be retooled. I would imagine the same applies here, right? Maybe not all of this is terrible, and I'm not saying it is, but my God, like it seems really bad and it sounds really bad. And I think that after they're probably done with their final audits of everything, then everything will kind of come out in the wash and we'll figure out like, well, where's that money going? But until then, it sounds really bad. It looks bad, and it looks like that they're just stealing our money.
So I saw a meme, and it was somebody standing in front of Teslas in the same format as that iconic photo of the Tiananmen Square massacre. So they were standing in front of
Yeah,
Cybertrucks as if they
those
were
are
the
not
tanks.
moral equivalents. I'm sorry.
No.
I agree with you, but it shows how unhinged some of these people are, and I just can't wrap my brain around the fact that this has become a partisan issue. This should unite the left and right. We should
They
all
should.
stand against this
Well, they're
this
only
waste.
protesting it because it's Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
And that I still can't understand, because if a leftist, if Alexandria Cortez was suddenly leading the charge against government waste, I probably would become an Alexandria Cortez fan.
Well, some of these people are mad because their piggy bank is getting taken away from them.
Right.
I think that's the only way this makes sense.
Right.
And
I mean, you can't tell me that like all the money, all the tax dollars that they took for like Ukraine and stuff, like, come on, some of that had like
well, we know
not
a lot
all
of
that
that
went
was
to the war
Ukraine.
effort. I'll tell you that. Like, there's no way it did. You know, like not when you've got Ukrainian officials buying brand new cars and property in the middle of a war. I mean, come on, like,
and those weapons
give me a
finding their
fucking
way
break.
into Africa and being smuggled out of Ukraine, and
Yeah.
it's clearly
Now,
not being
I
well
will
spent.
say there's probably some stuff that goes to like black budget projects, and I'm not against that. You know, you probably need some of those programs. You probably do want to continue to develop like stealth aircraft and all of that. I'm not against those things, but we need to know where it goes. You can't just have a fucking blank check from the American people and spend us into just a $36 trillion debt. Like, it's you can't have that. You can't have, you know, an unlimited credit card from us. But
I think the sign of that being unsustainable is the fact that more debt has to be sold in order to service that debt. Every year we're hearing about this debt limit, and we got to print more money. We got to be responsible and pay our bills. We're printing money. It is the electronic equivalent of printing money. The Federal Reserve magics this money into thin air,
yeah,
and uses it to buy treasuries. Now,
yeah,
hypothetically,
and every
that
year
money
we're
gets.
going to have a government shutdown because we can't pay for the government. You know, we'll just ask the Fed to, you know, raise our limit. It's like I can't go to fucking Capital One and be like, hey, I'm running out of money. Can you guys just raise my limit so I can borrow more? Like, I would go bankrupt.
There's an end of that,
you know,
that train ride at some point. But yeah, now hypothetically, that money should get destroyed by the Federal Reserve at some point with this weird system that we have. But I don't think that's happening right now.
Well, and to kind of circle back to that $5,000 dividend. So this is something that Elon Musk posted on X. He said he would ask Donald Trump about a proposal for a Doge dividend. And what it would do is it would give taxpayers a refund check of $5,000, and it would be funded by the savings from the Department of Government Efficiency, which is Doge. So like all of the programs that I just rattled off, all the, you know, billions and hundreds of millions of dollars that they're spending on these other programs, they would figure out which ones to get rid of essentially and figure out if they could give, you know, people basically a dividend out of that. And in our chat, when we were talking the other day, a couple of people had mentioned, I think Yard Sale and Random Wire 107 was mentioning, you know, I'd rather have it go to our national debt and try and pay those things down or off rather than take $5,000. And there's some logic there. I don't know. What would you guys want? Do you want the money, or do you want it to go to, you know, making our country financially solvent?
I think in the short term, having $5,000 in your pocket to help pay your own debt down is beneficial.
Right.
But long term wise, if it's gonna be effective enough to bring our national debt down, which I doubt that it would be. I mean, long term wise, that would be okay too. I don't know that $5,000 for every taxpayer, if that $5,000 went towards the national debt, if it's going to really make that much of a difference towards it.
Well, I guess in theory, they're going to probably turn right around and spend that money and put it back into the economy. So I mean, look, I'm not an economist. I don't know anything about that stuff, but maybe that's the idea. I don't know. What do you think, Drew? Do you want the money so you can get some new rims for your ambulance, or what?
I have a lot to say about this, and I'm
You
going
could
to
get the
tell you
rims that
upfront.
keep spinning for your ambulance, so when you guys stop, they
That'd
keep
be
going.
sick. I
That'd
would
be
ghost
awesome.
ride that whip.
Yeah.
So, if this is a political move, I don't think it's a very wise one. If this is just a political move to gain popularity, the key word there, and Jared, you just said it goes to taxpayers. And I've heard this a number of times, that it would not go to people who didn't pay taxes. And that makes sense. I understand why people would be upset that their money is being wasted. They're going to say, I want my money back. You're wasting it. But a lot of Trump's voters probably don't actually pay federal taxes, or they probably get it all back. And I honestly don't even know at the end of the year how much I pay or get back. I can't remember. So I might even be in that category. I do as many write-offs as I can. And I think when people are being promised, or at least they have the perception that they're being promised $5,000 and that check doesn't come, that may backfire on them quickly. But in terms of just the wisdom of sending these checks out, we should not forget that this is still borrowed money. This is not all of a sudden money we saved. This is still borrowed money. There's still a liability on the balance sheet that accounts for where this money came from.
Yeah, but every year,
most of that money did not come from taxes. Most of it came from magicking money into existence at the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, you're right. And, and every year we always hear these politicians bitching about, oh, there's not going to be enough money for Social Security. Well, no shit. Now that we saw how you guys have been spending our tax dollars, now we understand why you can't fund Social Security. We get it now. But
I would love to understand that chart a little better, because I saw that one where like 150-year-olds, 300-year-olds were receiving Social Security checks. I understand there's something where the heirs of the heirs, HEIRS, are receiving funds from people who are long dead, and that's legal. And so maybe that appears that a 150-year-old person is receiving Social Security. I think I recall an article years ago about some going to like, go ahead.
I think there's like situations where like,
so like if a 90-year-old guy married an 18-year-old girl and she would, yeah.
I think the surviving spouse can still collect that Social Security or something to that effect. And I think even if he remarries, but if she doesn't, like, I think she can still get his like Social Security or something. But
I don't know for sure
if
this is illegal activity, is what I'm saying. It might be. It probably is, but there may
probably
be some
not
special
all of it,
circumstances.
No, but,
I would say the majority of it is fraud.
It's probably a safe assumption, knowing what we know about the way our federal government runs its business. But
I mean, I don't mean to sound pessimistic about it, but that's just that just seems to be the way the government is. I mean, it's run on fraud.
I mean, I don't want to make too many assumptions. I've said quite a bit already, but I don't know.
So,
I'm really curious to see what happens, after all of the final audits, like how much of this really is just them wasting our money and how much of it, is actually legit. And, I mean, because some of this stuff, we've got people sleeping on the fucking street. And, I would rather see, if we're going to do welfare programs, I'd rather see charities start at home than overseas.
well, who's spending that money still? and I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with the sentiment, but we still have really irresponsible people spending that money. So George Gammon, the rebel capitalist, he had a really interesting take on this. And he said, if we're going to continue with this same plan of government wastes our money, then yes, people should get checks, because the consumer, the average taxpayer, is going to spend that money more wisely than the government ever will. And I thought that was really interesting. I had not considered it from that angle. So who's administering that welfare program to get people off the streets? If it's the same people who are administering the extremely wasteful programs in places like Seattle right now, in San Francisco, that end up funding
think we're
nothing.
probably going to find, if we're just being conservatively, I would say that we're probably going to find, when it's all said and done, a lot of these programs probably got created during past administrations, and some of them were probably supposed to sunset and they just kept going. And that's why you have some of these, some of our tax dollars allocated to things where we're like, well, why are we paying for that? When I was reading through some of the Doge stuff, they were talking about that, where, they were still paying like, some contractor from like 1980 for work that was completed a long time ago, and the checks should have stopped.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Just things like that. So
that guy needs sued. Whoever that is needs to get sued for that money back.
If it's even a dude, if it's even legitimately some contractor that's still collecting.
Okay, this lady contractor, this hypothetical
I'm not
female contractor
I'm not saying whether it's male or female. I'm saying like it may not even be going to who they're saying it's going to.
Yeah, maybe. So I don't know how it. So okay, this is going to take an act of Congress, no doubt. I don't think the president can just decide to send this money. I think it would still need to go through Congress, and maybe it's a 50-50 chance that gets through Congress. You would need every single Republican plus going through some sort of reconciliation process to bypass the majority, or the what is the filibuster in the Senate, right? So even if it did happen, I don't see how this isn't inflationary. So we may be shooting ourselves straight in the foot on this. George Gammon didn't think it would be inflationary, but I don't understand how it couldn't be if you have more hot dollars in the system chasing the same amount of goods. That's what inflation is. That is a demand pull inflation. So this may actually be destructive, possibly. But I don't think we can forget that this is debt. Yeah, sure. And we have no control over that, really, but
yeah,
this is still debt. It probably should go to paying off the debt. And in the end, once that debt is paid off and we have to pay less in taxes to a government that is far less bloated, perhaps we will get ahead, or our children or our grandchildren will get ahead in life.
I don't want the $5,000. I really don't.
If they're giving out $5,000, I want my $5,000. However, it's probably a terrible idea.
I don't think they should. It's just I didn't think it was a good idea during COVID that they did that. I really don't. And we've just got too much money that we owe, and we've got a lot of unfunded liabilities that we probably legitimately need to take care of. And we just can't keep running up a bill. And I don't think that sending everybody a check, is a good idea. I really don't. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment.
Another bank or institution's debt.
What was that? I missed the first part.
That's okay. Is it any different than a bank or an institution buying another institution's debt?
I have no idea. I don't know. Like, I mean,
what do you mean by that? Tell me more.
A lot of banks will buy debt from other banks for pennies on a dollar, and then they try to collect on that debt in hopes of making a few dollars.
That's how debt collections agencies work. I know that. So, if you don't, when I worked as a paralegal, we, came across quite a few people who, were having issues with those kinds of companies, and they would buy, the debt. So if you had like $100, they might pay 10 and buy it from the, Sears or whoever. Well, Sears isn't around anymore, but buy it from, whoever you owe the money to, and then try and collect that money. Sure. But I don't know if I don't think this is the same as that.
Okay.
I don't think so. I could be wrong. I have no idea.
I don't know. I have no idea.
We'd have to get a financial expert on to tell us where we're correct and where we're incorrect. Because
where's Phil? Phil, get in this comment
you
box.
know what? Yeah.
I was going to say, where's Dave Ramsey at?
Phil would.
There we go.
Phil would be able to probably set us straight, I think. But on that,
I'll be right back, guys.
Sure.
I gotta let you outside here.
No, all right. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard not to get kind of amped up when you read some of this stuff, in the news, how they're spending our money, and you're like, I don't know, like it just confirms things that I think people probably thought for a long time, but it's also another thing to to have a new administration come in and be like, yep, everything you thought was correct. This is how they're spending your money. But I don't know. We have such a weird culture and society now where it's like, this won't piss people off, but like, the results of The Bachelor, like get everyone up in arms and on TikTok. So I don't know.
I still just don't understand how this doesn't unite the left and right. We should all be pissed off about this. This is our money. This is our children's money. This is probably our great-grandchildren's money at this point.
Yeah.
The number 32 trillion is unfathomable. I wish news outlets would actually just print out all the zeros. When we're talking about these numbers,
well, let's see.
So many billions of dollars to, but you get what I'm saying? Like the 32 and then a word that starts with T it looks small until you start stacking up zeros and start illustrating how much of certain products that would purchase, how many Tesla Cybertrucks you could buy with $32 trillion. I wish they did a better job of explaining that, because it seems so far out of touch. Oh, it's only 32 trillion. That's it. That's all. Or 36, whatever it is now. I have to check the debt clock. I can't keep up.
There you go.
Oh, you got it.
$36 trillion up in the upper left-hand corner. That's the famous debt clock that, and this thing's, I mean, it's granular. I mean, you can get down to all kinds of crazy stuff. Let's see. Medicare enrollees, how many U.S. millionaires they are, the U.S. population. So it's whoever runs this. I'm not sure who actually does, but they. Oh, interesting. They've got a little X.
My screen
down there.
My
but
screen's
yeah,
too
I mean,
small.
it gets pretty granular, and it
Gotcha.
shows you. Like largest budget items would be Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, defense, and then it shows you the interest on debt. Excuse me. And growing.
What did you say about millionaires and millionaires receiving Medicare? I can't see it. My screen's way too tiny.
Oh, no. I think it just lists how many U.S. millionaires there are or something like that.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably need $1 million to retire. Actually.
It has quite a bit. I don't know if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever really looked at this. Like it's been a while since I looked at it, but like it lists like U.S. bankruptcies, foreclosures, people living in poverty. Let's see. Supposedly that number is around 37 million. The number of people without insurance, 27 million. Food stamp recipients, 42 million.
We're running out of time to pay this off. If you'll recall, Alexandria Cortez said that the world's going to end in 12 years, and that was like 8 years ago. So we got to pay this off before the world ends from the climate change.
Indeed. Indeed.
Was it ASC or was it that
for a sec.
Gretchen girl?
I'm AOC is who sticks out in
Greta
my mind.
Thunberg.
Or Greta, yeah.
Is
Greta
who you're talking about?
Thunberg.
Thunberg. I don't think she gives much of a shit about.
All right.
Well, anyway, whatever. Well,
The environment.
what's next? Border wars.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me just pull up my next slide here. All right, we won't beat the Doge thing to death anymore. Maybe we'll come back to it. Depends on how angry we get and how much bourbon Jared consumes. But let's see. Nope, hold on. That's not the one that I wanted. Just kidding. Let's see. It went all the way back to the beginning when I showed you the U.S. debt clock. All right, maybe that's the one. There we go. All right, so basically this kind of recaps how in a recent interview with ABC News, the border czar, Tom Homan, said that he anticipates potential kinetic activity between the U.S. military and drug cartels, and that basically since U.S. military have been deployed to the southern border, they've also got Air Force surveillance aircraft that's also been patrolling areas over Baja California that are basically known to be controlled by cartels. But essentially, if you kind of go through the article, he talks about how if you're deployed down there, then you should probably expect some sort of kinetic activity to go on. And I don't know. This is kind of an interesting one. I've always wondered, even back as far as like the George W. Bush administration. They were talking about even back then how problematic the cartels are and how dangerous they are. And fast forward to 2025. It's kind of interesting to see that we're possibly going to deploy troops against these guys to stop them. I don't know if that means we go into Mexico or not, but we'll see.
What is this expects business? Expects like it may happen in the future. It's already happening. Who killed Agent Terry with an Operation Fast and Furious weapon that the Obama administration allowed to be sold to the Mexican drug mafia? It's already happening.
Well, that's
it's happened.
That's so that they could track where all the firearms that they were.
Yeah, how do you track them? By a trail of dead U.S. law enforcement bodies?
Well, they know
Is that how you find them? You just follow.
It's great to know where they're at and find them, but then they find them, they don't do anything to them. So if they're going to go ahead and wage this war on Mexican drug cartels, they just need to do an all-out offensive on it and start killing the fuckers. And they need to not handicap through bureaucracy our troops and our military to the point where they can't do their job.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
Sorry, I get a little fired up about it.
No, that's fine. I mean, you worked in law enforcement, so I get it. I'm sure if I worked in law enforcement, I'd probably have a similar opinion because, they do. In the past, they have hamstrung people, and I wonder if the Trump administration's actually going to just turn our law enforcement and military loose on these people. And it seems like the president of Mexico, I forget her name offhand, but she's an interesting one because she was recently, this last week, I guess, trying to change their constitution to almost kind of keep us from going after them, but also at the same time supporting the drone surveillance of the cartels and all that stuff. So it seems like they're kind of giving us mixed messages that, yes, we recognize that they're a problem. We'll help you kind of curtail them, in their activities, but they're also kind of, I don't know. It's almost like they're kind of trying to please two masters, I guess.
Yeah, and my thoughts on that is the act that she proposed should probably be named the Please Don't Colombian Necktie Me Act of 2025. There's no way you can convince me that she is not under their influence in some capacity, either on their payroll or she's been threatened and she's just trying to preserve herself. And then she throws that little treat out there of, well, we'll help you surveil them. We'll support surveillance at the border, just to throw in that doubt that she's actually in their pocket.
I don't know, Jared. You're in the military. Like, you think, what are the chances that we're going to do some sort of incursion into like Baja, California, and do something?
They'll probably send small unit operations down there, and it might have a very minimal effect on some of the stuff that's going on. But until they actually go down there and actually mean business, it's not going to do a thing. The cartels have so much money, so much infrastructure. I mean, most of the citizens of these countries down there do something either directly or indirectly for the cartels.
Right.
They're so embedded in the culture down there. And until they can change the economies of these countries as well, like down in Colombia, the farmers down there, their crops don't make money because they're paid so little for what they do. So they're out there, they're making the coca leaves and stuff for the cartels because the cartels are paying them for it. And they're making 20 times what they could growing corn or beans or whatever
right,
avocados or something,
Do you think
why
the
wouldn't
American
you grow cocoa leaves for the cartel and
do you think the American public would support putting U.S. military in harm's way to get this done?
I think it would be split.
I don't want it. I don't want my friends and their kids to be shot to death and have their limbs blown off over this in Mexico. I think we militarize the shit out of our border. We eminent domain all of those border wall panels that were sold off for pennies on the dollar. We eminent domain that back. Why on earth was that sale allowed to go through? Whatever has already been sold, I doubt it's all been scrapped up. Eminent domain that back. That is a strategic asset that needs to be put standing upright 30 feet in the air in between us and Mexico and militarize it. And if somebody wants to get silly at the border, I'm much more supportive of military action against those hostile actors in the defense of our border. But I'd rather not see border incursions into Mexico.
I mean, ultimately, I don't want to see any of our troops down there going into other countries. But if they are going to do it, they need to do it almost completely free of bureaucracy, because otherwise it's not going to make a difference. And there's only a small percentage of the drugs that actually come across the border from Mexico. They come across it in lots of other ways too. A lot of it's coming through legitimate shipping. The cartels are putting them in shipping containers and it's getting through customs that way. So until a lot of that other stuff is curtailed, you're never gonna see a huge drastic decrease in it.
I agree that we don't need another Iraq, but on our southern border. And what I mean by that is, like in Iraq, they had, in both, Gulf Wars or whatever that was, that they had a lot of insurgent activity. And I was reading, I wish I could find it. I have to go back and see if I can find it. But it was an article that was talking about how during World War II, there were just as many and maybe slightly more insurgent attacks on U.S. troops when we went into, Germany and Japan and throughout Europe. and just during the entire course of the war, as there were in Iraq. And they said that the difference in this article, because they were kind of trying to analyze a lot of data from World War II and Iraq, and talking about numbers of insurgent attacks and stuff like that, and that they were saying that the difference was reprisals. So during World War II, if you shot one of our troops, we're going to go after you and your family. And we don't do that in Iraq, I guess. But they said that was like one of the key differences. And I think if you're going to fight the cartel, they're going to have reprisals against you. They're going to try and go after your family here. And I think if you're not as ruthless, I think you're right, Jared. I think that if you go in there with a bunch of bureaucracy and you're not going in there to actually get rid of these people, then it's probably pointless.
It is.
Kinetic warfare is not the only way to fight this either. In fact, it's probably one of the least effective ways, because we're talking about fighting a black market.
Right.
When has a black market ever been eradicated? That's probably just a pipe dream. Economic warfare may actually be more effective. And what I'm talking about is legalizing hard drugs. As awful as that sounds, and as destructive as hard drugs are, making them illegal doesn't get rid of them. That's not preventing shit, actually. Ask me how I know.
How many Narcan patients do you get a week?
Yeah, it's fewer than you'd think up here.
Well,
Mostly
yeah.
meth. Crystal meth is the drug of choice, and it's not as immediately deadly unless you're talking about the crime that people have to commit in order to feed their addiction. But if some of this stuff was legalized, then there would be absolutely no economic incentive to conduct cartel operations. They'd have to go find something else to do.
I don't know if I would. I'm not saying you're wrong. I get the point. I just,
it's a horrifying
I don't know
thought.
that I'm willing to go down that road of legalizing it. I just don't. I don't know. That seems like a lot of bad shit could really happen.
Is it not happening now? And
it is, but I'm worried
prohibition
that
on it.
Well, I'm worried that it would exacerbate the issue. And, like with prohibition, like people already had alcohol and then they banned it. And I think that's why it got out of control. It'd be the same with firearms. If you banned all the firearms in America, and, there'd be a prohibition style black market for that. But drugs haven't always, to my knowledge, like Narcan and all the stuff that you're talking about, that's not stuff that's always been available over the counter to people, right?
They give it away for free in the parking lot of Food Line here in town. There's a car that sets up. There's a car that sets up shop here once a week or so, and has a big sign on the back of it that says free Narcan.
I need to swing down there because it's about $40 a vial, and I'm tired of paying for it.
Well, damn, I mean, expensive. Like the whole marijuana thing, like that's legal in quite a few states. It's legal here, in Nevada, but you have to go to, a specific store to get it, and it's pretty regulated and all that. But
there's still a black market for it,
and it does generate quite a bit of revenue, and so there's some arguments there, for what you're saying, Drew. And you're right, Jared. There is still a black market for it, and so even though it's been legalized, that's the point, though. There still is a black market. I don't know that legalizing it's going to make that black market go away. I don't think it will.
It would depend on the taxes placed on it, and that's where the marijuana issue that you brought up. There would be no black market on marijuana if the taxes weren't burdensome. Right. And so as long as somebody can produce it or buy it on a black market cheaper than through controlled means, there will be a black market. It's just economics. As far as crystal meth and fentanyl, I just don't know. I don't see a whole lot of winners in either situation, but one of them wipes out the cartels.
Well, I don't know. Nature hoards a vacuum. So, I mean, even if the cartels go away, I mean, does something take its place?
Let me argue with you, though. How many rum runners are shooting people up in America?
Well, they don't. Yeah, that's true.
That prohibition was eliminated.
No, it just turned into
And
NASCAR.
fair enough. Yeah, and that's fun for the whole family. We got Donald Trump out there with the limousine. I love it. But we don't have a black market for liquor anymore. And liquor is very destructive. Sure.
No,
It could also be
not
used.
like we had during Prohibition. We don't have speakeasies and all that stuff, of course. But there's still
I'm
people
just talking
that,
about on your body,
No.
body, and on people's families. And sure, it's not good. And I understand what the prohibitionists were trying to accomplish, and it didn't work. And it caused more harm than just allowing people to make decisions for themselves.
What do? You legalize it, and then you take away any support for.
I'll be right back. I'm going to grab some more coffee.
He's gonna pee.
Talk amongst yourselves. Oh, you know what? That's a good idea. I will be right back.
He's got a roasted deezer.
Do you take away all the support that goes?
Wash your hands. Sorry.
You take away all the support that goes along with being Narcan or almost dying, such as Narcan and any health care that goes.
Do I take away support? What do you mean?
So if you're going to legalize hard drugs, are you going to take away the health care that goes into them overdosing and dying and all the health problems that those drugs produce?
That thought hadn't even entered my mind. Why would you come up to that conclusion? Tell me more. I'd like to understand it.
Because it would be, if you would have all these other people, there might be more that would be on drugs and be more of a taxing burden on the healthcare system than it is now. Or would you still have the same number of people?
I don't think that is
anymore.
I don't think that's a great place for healthcare providers to be in, because we would have to go to a place. We're going to get called anyway, and we have to respond, and so then we would have to make a determination about this person's intentions. Did they accidentally take too many of their legally prescribed pain pills, or did they smoke a fentanyl pill? And then we've got to decide to withhold care, and I don't like that. I don't like that place. I think Americans roundly rejected this idea that, for example, a few years ago, that healthcare should be withheld from people who decided they didn't want to take a certain medicine, that it wasn't for them. I thought that was abhorrent, because if the most heinous criminal that you could ever think of called 911, I will go out and provide medical treatment to that person, in the hospital will. But then we decided that, well, if somebody doesn't want to take the medicine, then they would receive worse care than like the worst death row like predator that you can right. come up with. Right?
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not advocating for that. I mean, is that what would happen?
I don't know. I think we could look to places like Seattle and Portland at their problem right now, because I don't think the problem is any less by having a prohibition on drugs. Because those people get arrested and they're turned right back out on the street to go buy more drugs, right? So we could look to them to see, and those systems are overtaxed. Yeah,
to the justice system.
Those systems are overtaxed, but I don't know that they would get more overtaxed, especially if there's a relief of some of the stigma on seeking out treatment, against seeking out treatment.
Right.
I just don't know. I'm not trying to sound like some hippie commie here. I'm looking at the reality of the situation, that prohibition doesn't work. That is not a statement in support of hardcore drug use.
So if you're going to combat and I did pee, by the way, that was a good call. I almost made it. Of course, all the time. I almost made a split decision, like to hold it and just get coffee, but that would have been a bad move. But I don't know, if you're going to combat the cartel, I mean, do you do what you were saying earlier, Drew? I guess you made reference to possibly doing some sort of like buffer zone. What does that look like?
A buffer zone? I'm talking about a wall.
Well,
we have a real wall, that
partial wall.
What? Okay, and yeah, so we see already that a lot of the human trafficking goes around the wall. So there is some deterrent there.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you've got a tunnel, that's a lot of work. If you got to climb over a 30-foot wall, well, that's a whole lot different than a 13-foot wall. So,
Well, the problem is during the last Trump administration, there were quite a few states that and politicians that wanted to obstruct funding for that wall. And there was that big argument of, well, I'll take money from this program and divert it over to the building of the wall. And then when Biden got into office, they did everything they could to reverse the work that had been done.
do you remember the number that he asked for money?
No,
I'll tell you if you don't remember. It was $5 billion. And I remember all of the pearl clutching over this $5 billion number. Oh my gosh, he wants to waste our $5 billion on a racist wall. Only racists have walls around their property.
And then
you show
the Ukraine 55 times over.
You show this Doge report of how many multiple times 5 billion were just wasted on trans operas in Latin America. This is insanity. So,
well, and
that
also,
was all feigned outrage.
Well, and they didn't have any problem funding Ukraine's war for them either. You know,
Sure.
and forget about
more than 5 billion.
And that doesn't, I guess, include probably all the military hardware that they gave to them as well. So, I mean, I don't know. Like you said, it was a bunch of fake outrage, and they just wanted to do everything to kind of go against against the grain, against the guy's agenda, and that's all it was about.
Obstructionism.
It's unfortunate. I mean, because you're not doing business on behalf of the American people at that point, which is why we elect these people. You know, it's like you're supposed to be doing business on behalf of us, and you're supposed to have our best interests in mind. And they clearly don't. And I don't know. That's why they always vote against things like term limits, which we should have, by the way. We should have term limits in Congress. Like, you shouldn't be a congressman or a senator for like 50 years. I don't know.
It's not a career, it's a service.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it should be a honor and a privilege to serve your country, not whatever the hell it is they're currently doing. They're just milking us, and that's the other thing is, like, some of these people that go into office, they don't have, they don't make a lot of money. They're just kind of, regular folks like you and me, and then leave office, multimillionaires. And it's like, well, how does that happen?
Super interesting. So yeah, maybe a term limit of 8 years for the House of Representatives, like 2 terms, right? It's 4 years.
Yeah.
So
and I wouldn't
you got 2 terms
from
in
any
the
other
House.
Public service. Like, maybe
Sure.
if you serve as a senator, maybe you could be a congressman or whatever. But
so that would make it more difficult to set up those money laundering schemes, whatever they're doing to become millionaires off of a Washington D.C. job.
Well,
very interesting.
Wasn't it Nancy Pelosi who got pissed off because someone was posting her stock picks on like X or something, and so I mean, whoever was making those picks for her is a genius. She was making some money, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens during this administration, and it's going to the next election cycle is going to be fascinating because I think they took like a CPAC poll or something. Obviously, JD Vance currently is the front runner, but it'll be interesting to see how the Democrats kind of retool their party and who they put to run against him, because
it's going to be tough. He's such a genuine looking guy. I look at him and I see genuine goodness. And maybe I'm totally wrong here. Maybe I'm just being sold a product, but yeah, but I see genuine. goodness in him. But
One of
and
the
also
things
I
that
love his quick wit, and I love his confident speaking ability, and I like that he seems to have genuine concern for the plight of the average American. I like that he has a history of actual service, and so
right.
I'll be voting for him unless barring some new circumstance. But yeah, they're gonna pick some other just plastic, disingenuous slime to run against him, and I really hope people are able to make better decisions, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it will be fascinating. I'm very curious to see how they kind of, if they're able to rise from the ashes after this, because um, I mean, if you think about it, all of the work that went into trying to prevent a second Trump administration, was quite extensive. And, that was a pretty big hit for them after he got elected the second time. And so it'll be interesting to see how they rise from the ashes, or if they can. I'm sure they will, I mean,
It's not gonna. It can't be Gavin Newsom.
no,
I
no,
mean,
it
you
can't.
don't get to lock your citizenry down and then go have yourself a nice dinner at the French Laundry
Yeah.
and then win a popularity contest.
Yeah. I would be surprised if they propped him up. But I don't know. I guess he's he's a little bit of a survivor in the political landscape. I mean, every time you think that he's going to get like recalled or something, he avoids it.
Because he's slimy.
Years ago, there was a governor of California, Gray Davis, and he got recalled. I believe he got recalled, and I think it was over, this like energy crisis that they had kind of going on in the early 2000s, and it just kind of labored on for the next couple of years. But that's when California started having like rolling blackouts and stuff like that, and he got recalled over that, and his popularity declined pretty significantly over that one issue. And it's like, it makes you wonder how Gavin Newsom is able to survive and continue on. What have you got going on back there, Drew?
Oh, I was just trying to see if I got any information for TCS, and I have not got any traffic on 20 meter. You folks are missing out on a great training opportunity here.
Indeed. So spin up your G90s and your digital.
Yeah, the man packs. Get the man packs
Get
out.
those man packs.
What are you
out that
doing?
We hear so much about on the internet that everyone loves so much. I don't know. It is a good training opportunity to try and mess around on HF, but I don't know. It's another one of those things where, like, if you don't have anyone to talk to, it makes it a little bit difficult to experiment.
You come talk to the TCS. We be your friends. Calling me now. Anyway, sorry. Throw back to the 90s there. All right.
Well,
what else are we going to talk about?
I don't know. We're at an hour and 38 minutes. What have you got, Jared? I know I could see the wheels turning. You've got tons of stuff to throw out there. So the floor is all yours, buddy.
Cartel stuff gets me pissed off and fired up. Because I know it's just going to be...
When you were in law enforcement, did you ever have any, I guess, interactions with people that you either knew to be in the cartel or that you suspected that they were?
No, my law enforcement career was pretty benign. I was just low-level street cop.
Swearing at kids
and dragging them out through the window.
On their way to Bible study.
Right, because
So you were the man and you were just harassing people. Is what
just trying to get money for school clothes.
Right.
Just wishing that you could just break out that Mini 14 in your Chevrolet Caprice.
And even when I worked out there in Fallon, out there in Nevada, I mean, the gangs were prevalent, but most of them in the Fallon area were pretty much wannabe bangers.
Right.
You know, they weren't much of anything. So it's probably a lot different there now. I mean, the place is probably totally different. But no, most of the cartel stuff goes back to my military days and whatnot. So just the bureaucracy behind fighting a drug war is so deep and so unbelievably complex that you don't make any impact. You might disrupt them for a day or so or a week, and then they just find a different way of doing things.
Well, like the whole war on drugs during the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, like that. I mean, that was kind of a political thing, but I don't know how successful any of that stuff was. And I know in that situation, we're not talking about leveraging the military to keep people off drugs like we are here with the cartels in Baja California. But I mean, even back then, like, I don't know how successful that was. I mean,
it wasn't a success at all.
Yeah, because you're. I guess we were trying to apply a law enforcement solution to, kind of a human problem that, I don't think you can really handle with bureaucracy, and you're kind of, and I think that's probably why it failed. But, in this situation, it's probably a little bit different because you have guys that are basically paramilitary. I mean, I'm sure you've seen videos and pictures of the Sinaloa cartel and some of these guys that are pretty well armed, and they, they've got some hardware, and I could see the thought process of, well, we could leverage our military against them. But that's why I was asking earlier, like, how many people do you think would really support putting our people in harm's way over that? Or, maybe the solution is what Drew's saying, where, maybe we build a wall and just keep them out, keep them at bay, and let them do whatever they're going to do on their side, and we're going to do what we do on ours.
The problem with that is it's still going to spill over. If we let them do what they're going to do, it's going to spill over to here. There's no way to keep it out of here. We can curtail it a little bit, but the border isn't the biggest problem. It's, like I said, it's the drugs coming in on ships and aircraft and whatnot. And it's not just from South America and Mexico. It's coming in from China that way as well.
Right.
I think the people would not be for it if they actually knew how ineffective it was. They're going to portray it as being effective, but it's not. Unless they're given pretty much free range to go in there and kick ass and chew bubble gum, whatever, it's not going to be effective of curtailing these cartels.
Well, that's the other problem is, every time we get into some kind of conflagration, like, no one really outlines what success looks like. And I mean, you'll there's objectives, sure, but no one really says, okay, like, once this is done, then we're getting out. And I mean, what does success really look like in this situation? I mean, do you just go in there and fucking kill all these guys and make examples out of them? And then,
well, it would look like the elimination of a black market, which to my knowledge has never occurred. I'm not aware of a success story where a black market was eliminated. You're talking about Afghanistan earlier with the opium fields. Like, did 20 years of occupation of Afghanistan with our military forces eliminate that? Or did they just plant more?
No, instead we pulled.
And we left, and they came back in power, even more powerful, and here we are.
And there's a lot of people that have served that have said that we ended up pulling fucking security guard duty to keep those fields going too.
Yes.
So
I believe it.
Well, 100%. Yes.
So I don't know. I mean,
Maybe I'm ignorant. Maybe there are lots of success stories out there. Maybe there's some sort of tactics book written on how you can accomplish that. My assumption is the only way that that would ever end is if we decided to embrace total crimes against humanity. We'd probably a genocide would have to take place, and that's not worth it. That's certainly not
The
acceptable.
only way you're going to curtail it is, first of all, is economically, because it's economically necessary for these people to do it in order to make money, whether it's the cartels or the farmers supplying the cartels with cocaine. The other aspect of it is the evil aspect of human nature, and you're never going to curtail that either.
Sure. The only success story I can think of off the top of my mind for eliminating a guerrilla force would be, I believe it was during the Civil War, Sherman's campaign against Quantrell. You guys jump in here if you can correct me on some facts, but I believe Quantrell was acting as a guerrilla and was very effective. And then was it Sherman? I can't even remember now.
I don't know.
Grant,
I'm
I
not familiar
apologize.
with that one.
Grant, I'm sorry, that was stupid. Grant laid waste to every bit of ground that Quantrell could have gone to, and I might be totally wrong on my facts, but I believe Grant successfully eliminated that guerrilla movement, but it didn't involve a black market or anything.
That was a partisan type thing during war. It wasn't funded by.
But he did some horrifying shit to end it. Probably stuff that we would consider unacceptable today. Just laying waste to whole towns. I may be wrong. Please, somebody in the comments, hey, I just said something controversial. Jump in the comments. Where are you guys? I hope that some Civil War historian jumps in and can set me straight, because I admittedly am not where I should be on my understanding of that. But I'm aware of that situation, and that actually fairly effectively suppressed that guerrilla force. But these are essentially guerrillas running drugs, right?
Yeah.
In Mexico.
They are. Yeah. Well, that's why I said, they're basically a paramilitary force, and, they're funded by their drug operation. But I don't know. I mean, that's why I was saying, brought up like insurgent activity during World War II and stuff like that. Like they successfully eliminated it, through military reprisals. In Iraq, we didn't do that. And so it persisted. And that was the point of the article that I was referencing earlier. And I think that if you get into a fight with these people, like, the border czar is saying, this Tom Homan guy, he's saying you should expect kinetic activity between their side and ours. It makes me wonder, like, how far that shit's going to go. Like, you're going to start seeing insurgent activities, and, you might see some of it on our soil as a result. I mean, if we sick our military on these people, they're going to be a cornered animal, and they're going to do anything that they need to do to survive. And
they're going to start putting those IEDs in on our side of the border.
Absolutely. And, you're going to see some probably terrorist activities and shit like that, because, this stuff's effective. And
can't say terrorist because that makes Claudia upset.
Yeah, but if it wasn't effective, people wouldn't do it. And, I think that you'd potentially see stuff like that if this really escalates into that. And, I mean, no one wants to see that happen, of course, but I'm not sure what you do to stop these people. I'm not sure what the plan is there, and I'm not sure what happens if when it escalates. What you're saying, Jared, like you're going to start seeing like IEDs on the American side of the border and stuff like that. So I don't know. Wasn't there a Breitbart article a week or two ago talking about a potential IED, and like S2 Underground covered it or something.
I think that was in Mexico.
Yeah, but they weren't sure if it was or not. It was just it could have been anything, and I haven't heard anything about it since. I don't know if you guys have.
I have not. I haven't looked into it though. I think S2 did state that the news was very thin out of that area.
Yeah, it was very vague.
I don't know. My gut tells me this isn't going away until you cut off their economic incentive to continue operations, and that only looks like legalization. And I'm open to it. I'm open to the alternative, and that just a terrible situation all around.
We're not afraid to use predator drones to go after people, so I would imagine that would probably be the first thing that happens, right?
I'm not arguing with you, but I think limiting civilian casualties is going to be.
Some innocent kid gets caught up in a predator drone strike, it would stop pretty quick.
Well, that
happened with under the Obama administration. He ordered a drone strike, and I believe it was on like some 16, 17-year-old kid. I'll have to go back and comb through the interwebs, but I forget where that was, like Somalia or something. But
well, there was Biden's drone strike whenever he first took office that killed a bunch of innocent people.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think
they get away with that because that's in an area where the news doesn't work as well as it does in North America, and it's much further removed from our location. I think people can get away, politicians can get away with doing stuff like that when it's very difficult to see directly, immediately the effects.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true, and I think people are probably a little bit more desensitized to that than other. I guess Yoda needs to come back in.
I think we have a massive.
He's got there in the background there.
Oh, I'm jelly. I think we have a massive Mexican population in America. Even naturalized American Mexicans are probably not going to be a huge fan when they see limbs blown off of little children and cell phone video of that happening.
Probably not.
Caught up inadvertently in a drone strike.
The other thing
this is a terrible situation to even fathom, and we probably should avoid it at all costs.
That's the other thing is, like, if it escalated to that point, I think that you would have some pretty serious domestic issues. I'm sure people probably wouldn't go for that, and I would imagine that that would be kind of a political rallying point, is my guess. And if you're the Democratic Party, so Jared, when you stepped away, we were saying that Drew was saying that if it escalated to the point where we're going after the cartel and there's some collateral damage, some kids get killed on the Mexican side, that would probably rile up certain portions of our population here, and probably
quite a bit of white conservative Americans as well.
Like, yeah. Oh yeah,
I don't think anybody, but especially especially Mexican Americans.
Yeah, I'm not saying just the Hispanic population. I think that would probably be the way that the Democratic Party probably rises from the ashes, is around a political topic such as that, is my guess.
I hope this same conversation is occurring in the White House right now, weighing that risk. Like, I just don't want to see it go that route. I think we redoubt into our borders, we lock them down, and then we remove that economic incentive for cartels to continue operations and try to support Mexico in whatever capacity they're willing to.
I think we try and punish them economically and go that route. I mean, if you embargoes and things like that have worked against Iran, so we wanted to deter them from nuclear capabilities, and of course Biden reversed a lot of that stuff, but some of the economic sanctions and things that we were doing actually crippled them a lot more than we realized, I think. And perhaps that would Perhaps that would work here if we did something similar with Mexico and got the Mexican government to put pressure on the cartels and handle it their own way. I don't think we can. I agree with you. I don't think we can handle this problem for them. We also don't know how embedded the cartels are in the Mexican government. I would imagine quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, quite a bit.
No doubt.
And, and we've had boots on the ground against the war on drugs for decades, and it has minimal impacts on it.
Yeah, I think it's probably. I think you guys are probably right. It's probably an economic tactics would probably work better than trying to do it by force. I mean, that should be a last resort anyway, right? But I don't know. Hopefully it works, and hopefully we don't see kinetic action or fucking guerrilla warfare on the southern border. That would be a disaster. We don't want that here. But well, we're at 2 hours, so what else you guys got?
I got a pee. Oh, you were asking about like projects. I'm just kidding around.
Where'd you get that at?
Pee?
Yeah.
From my champagne here.
Well, and you've got 2 rock stars in the background, so that's probably not. Or are those full? Have you tapped into?
No. I'm celebrating 1,000 subscribers to my channel.
Oh,
I really
that's right.
appreciate
cheers,
all
sir.
of you folks.
Congratulations.
Yes. Appreciate everybody who's.
I hit 1,200 subscribers today.
Oh, that's so cool.
Really? Oh, congratulations. Yeah. That's a milestone. I mean, it's hard to build up a channel. It really is. I mean,
probably 1,100 of them are probably Russian and Chinese bots, but I'll take it.
I'll take what I can
And
get.
The other 100 are feds. Keep an eye
That's right.
on you.
Well, they need to have, YouTube channels to watch too. But no, it one of the things that kind of, it's funny you bring that up because, you'll look at it like a lot of channels and you'll see channels that have like 100,000 subs or 10,000, whatever, which is great accomplishment, tip of the cap to those. But it's hard to build up a channel. It really is. And it's hard to have, consistent engagement and things like that. So, congratulations, Drew. That's cool that you're able to get there. Cause, it's easy to kind of get lost in the whole YouTube landscape. I think a lot of content creators feel kind of siloed because it's like you're just cranking out videos and it's just kind of a grind and you're hoping people will give a shit about your content. And unfortunately, sometimes you'll get like really negative, all of us do get some like negative comments here and there. And like we tend to kind of focus on that as opposed to, all the people that did like the video. And it's easy to get distracted by some of the negative shit, but no, that's cool. I'm glad you're able to get there and in a short time too. Like you've only been doing it you've been posting videos for what, less than a year. So that's cool.
Yeah. And you got some great videos.
I really appreciate it, man. I decided I don't want to ever fall into the trap of I need to just churn out content. If I don't have a good idea, I'm not going to go make an unboxing video or and I'm not saying all unboxing videos are wrong, but the exact same device that everybody else was doing an unboxing video on. I'm not just going to make content for the sake of content. I want to release good ideas that people could potentially benefit from. And what I'm finding, I thought I would run out of ideas by now. I have way more ideas than I have time to produce videos about them. So I'm gonna keep going until I run out of good ideas, and then we'll just let it rest for a while.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, you don't want to make content just for the sake of doing it. I mean, some of those larger channels, I can see how eventually it turns into a revenue stream in a business, and that's why they do it. Sure. I get it. And
I don't ever see YouTube becoming a revenue stream for me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not knocking anyone that's trying to make a buck. That's fine.
No, not at all.
But you also kind of get into the habit of trying to make videos that you think people will like. So like, I don't know. There's only so many Bofeng UV 5R videos that you can do. You know, I've made quite a few of them, but I've made them because I'm genuinely interested in that radio and different things about it. But I agree with you. Like, I think once I get to a point where I kind of run out of shit to say and ideas, then I'll let it sit for a little bit and do something else. I guess that's kind of why I do just podcast episodes on the side, just to keep things interesting and not get stuck on one subject, you know. But that's why this is cool. That's why collaborating with other folks is cool, because kind of breaks up the monotony of doing long form videos or shorts, and then just kind of scrutinizing the analytics on those, you know.
Mhm.
So do you guys do
2
that?
hours.
You scrutinize your analytics?
Sure, it's fascinating. Doesn't change anything I'm going to do. If I had 10
Yeah.
people who wanted to watch and learn, I'd still do this for my own personal creative outlet.
Yeah.
Because I do see an obligation when we, Jared, for example, you went to all the time and trouble of learning about those, forgive me, the green radio, and you put a video out about it. I think we have an obligation to share information. We have an obligation to humanity, that final step of the scientific method. When we go to all that work collecting data, we're obligated to share that with humanity.
People have been commenting, and I just refreshed on StreamYard.
Oh, this is so cool. Tell me how wrong I am about the Civil War, please. I'd like to learn.
Comments that apparently we did not see as
no.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry, everybody.
Yeah. I've never seen that before on StreamYard. That was weird. Because as we were sitting here, like, they all just shut up.
Bummer.
They
any good ones?
Well, let's see. They stopped right after I said, "Welcome everyone in the chat," and that was it. And that was like an hour ago. That fucking sucks.
Oh, so are we glitching, or?
Yeah.
I see the comments on my side.
Do you?
Well,
yeah, all the way up till
hit us with some.
We're streaming on. So I've got all destinations. I've got the Com Syndicate, and then I'm also experimenting with streaming to my channel. And they all just showed up. That fucking sucks. Wow. Could have been engaging with you guys this entire time. But you got to enjoy 2 hours of us rambling through several topics. Let me see if there's any good ones. I'm sure they all are, but here's one. Steve Marshall says the ATF needs to go back to doing what it did successfully in the 70s and 80s and prevented gun running to overseas terrorists.
Sounds like a great role for them, rather than harassing mom and pop gun shop owners over commas and periods.
SOS Swish Outdoors and Survival says that the ATF is unconstitutional in every way. And let's see, what else we got?
It really should be the name of a convenience store.
Alcohol, tobacco, and fire. Yeah, that'd be a kick-ass store.
I
would spend my $5,000 Doge check there.
In Troy, Montana, there was a store called Liquor and Guns. They've since changed the name, but they still sell liquor and they still sell guns.
Steve Marshall says tax never goes away; it just changes its name. And I'm working my way through all these. Give me a second. Not a Fed boy. That's good to know. Washington Gun Laws says that the rumor is the ATF is going to be separated into smaller units and effectively be controlled through funding.
Cool.
Let's see what else.
We still need Congress to act and remove the Hughes Amendment, the FOPA, the GCA, and really overhaul the NFA, if not obliterate it completely.
Oh, dear Lord. Jared, you're going to love this one. So, Hoosier Irregulars, hopefully you know this person.
I do.
2Day Solutions is going live. Wow.
Look, just because a guy pops out of a minivan singing the Barbie Girl song doesn't mean he's gay.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
He was supposed to be.
Not that there'd be anything wrong with that.
He was supposed to be at that event, and he decided to stay home for the birth of his son instead of go
shit
play.
All over him, Jared. Let him have it right now. This is your time to climb into his ass right now.
Whoa,
Do better,
whoa!
Mike.
Considering the topic of that comment, I don't know if that was a great idiom here.
Well, all right. So let's see. What else do we have? All right. Let's see. Our good friend Scruffy McScrufferton. This is back on the solar panel issue. So he says, I have a small folding solar panel and 2 lithium batteries for radios and small electronics, phone, tablet, etc. Being an apartment dweller sucks for backup power preparedness. Yeah.
Hopefully you have a
I
southern
could-
exposure for that solar panel.
Yeah, it is hard to prep when you're in an apartment. I have had to go through that as well. Let's see. What else do we have here?
Well, I'm excited that people were interacting, even if you totally fucked it up, Terrence. And I'm joking around with you.
I don't know what to tell you. You know, like you test these things, and I've never seen it where like the comments just populate all of a sudden. That was fucking weird. I don't know what that's about. I assume it's probably got to be some sort of issue on my end with maybe my bandwidth or something. I don't know. You saw all of them, Jared?
Yeah,
You said nothing.
And you said nothing. Yeah.
You betrayed us.
I did.
He didn't want the gay comment coming up.
Yeah, I was trying to keep the gay comment away. I was hoping nobody would notice.
Well, anybody else we should acknowledge?
I'm working on it. Vanessa Kitty, hello Vanessa Kitty, says the government spends far more money than our families ever do or will. Yes, it does. And let's see.
Sadly.
Phil says, send us the money and cut off the crazy spending spree. Amen. This is in reference to our border conversation. Scruffy McScrufferson says, my issue with full kinetic action is that I feel cartel cells are spread all over the U.S. It may start at the border, but it will spread like wildfire with the states.
Yeah, and who knows if any of our enemies are funding them? Who knows if Iran's funneling weapons and money to them to fight their...
Now, this is something that sounds like a Fed would say, though. Carpet mine the border for 1 mile into Mexico. I don't know, not a Fed boy. I'm getting suspicious of you. Let's see. Oh, there's Phil.
Hey, he was
Hello,
there the whole
Phil.
time. He could have set us straight on the economics.
Well, we got into like finances and all kinds of stuff, and we could have used his expertise. Let's see. Our good friend Corsair Trainer says, how about we make drugs not cool again?
Yeah. And we could do that if we really embraced male mentorship in this country, I think. If people had like their fathers to look up to rather than rap videos of people smoking drugs, I think we wouldn't see quite so much of that. That's just my suspicion, though.
Gruffy McScrufferton's just getting a lot of love right now. If we legalize hard drugs, we need to stop dumping millions of dollars into the free healthcare related to their addiction.
Valid.
It's kind of like what you and I were talking about, Drew.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, though, the addiction's going to always be there, and perhaps interdiction and treatment for that. And I wonder, Corsair Trainers brings up a great point here about legalization in certain places not working. They also, all of the ancillary crime around that was legalized by default because they weren't prosecuting thefts and assaults.
See, this entire time I thought we weren't getting any love because we did this on a Sunday and everyone was there the whole time. Son of a bitch.
So there's a great documentary on YouTube for free, and I believe it's called Seattle is Dying. I think that's the documentary I'm thinking of, and they talked about when they actually do continue to criminalize the ancillary crime, and I think in that case drug use, you do have an opportunity to interdict with that person and their addiction. I think it's going to be a tightrope that we have to walk, but at least continuing to criminalize the ancillary crime around that does get that person into the system and does get that contact with them to hopefully help relieve their addiction, perhaps with methadone or some similar drug.
Hello, Yard Cell. He is one of our trusted mods. Yeah, the whole methadone thing. I mean, is that I've heard that shit's probably as bad or
It's an opioid, but
worse than heroin.
Yeah, it helps manage their addiction through a more constructive a less destructive.
Oh, here
means, I
we
should
go.
say.
Fucking war. He's one of these war of northern aggression guys.
Wait, who attacked Fort Sumter? I can't remember. How'd that go down? How'd that start? I can't remember. Somebody refresh my memory.
Oh, not a Fed boy got it. He said, "Were you referring to Sherman?" And you.
It might have been Sherman. Yeah, I can't remember if it was Grant or Sherman. You're probably right. You're going to know more about this than me. Sherman was the first name that came to my mind, but I thought maybe he came later. But it was probably Sherman fighting against Quantrell. And
then Yard
that sounds
Cell
about right.
said, okay, so I think Yard Cell's talking about that article we were talking about in Breitbart where he said that there was an IED in Acapulco. I can't fucking talk today. Near a police station recently.
Maybe you should have got that coffee.
I did. I fucking refilled this thing. I'm on my second one.
We're not going to beat somebody else's addiction for them. They have to be able to want it. So
that's true. Yeah, you
sure.
You do need to want to get sober, and like Corsair was saying, you got to make not wanting to do drugs cool again. I don't know how we can do that, but maybe that's one of the ways to kind of get the ball rolling in the right direction. Maybe, I don't know.
The drugs were always cool to the burnouts and not to the jocks.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I think we have probably a lot of work to cut out for us in our society, but we'll see.
We got to work on ourselves.
Let's see. I think that's the end of the comments. So we actually blazed through that pretty quickly. But
the last one I see is Felix said disband the ATF.
Yes, there we go. There, that one was hiding. Disband the ATF. We could.
Wiser words were never spoken.
Well, we'll see what happens. Maybe Cash Patel. Well, I don't know that they're going to disband it. They'll probably get absorbed in the FBI. But we're a little over 2 hours, so I guess we're probably out of shit to talk about. What have you guys got to close out with?
This is a lot of fun. Thank you very much for the conversation, as always.
Jared, this is where you speak up, like when you were supposed to.
Yeah, you got to talk now too.
Comments. Remember that part?
I'm thinking of something. Don't run with scissors. Drink your milk. And
stay in school.
Drugs are bad.
Drugs are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your channels before we close out. That might be good.
I'm Drew. Come on over to the Terminal Element. I'll teach you how to make some awesome digital communication system that you can actually use rather than just do POTUS. Not that there's anything wrong with POTUS, but we want to be prepared for emergencies. We want to be able to stay connected with our family, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So youtube.com/@terminalelement. See you there.
And I'm Jared with 2 Alpha Solutions, and I try to make radio videos.
And you do a wonderful job.
You do a wonderful job. I
have great ideas, and then I go to make the video. I'm like, boy, that sounds really dumb, and then I just don't make it.
Well, don't worry. If it is dumb, everyone on the internet will tell you.
They will.
I know they will.
They're very helpful that way. They'll let you know that your video sucks and that you should just quit.
Thumbs down.
And give up. Thumbs down, and then we'll just go back and watch like 10 seconds, and then turn it off to really screw up the algorithm to make sure that it doesn't push your content to people. Cool. Well, everyone in the chat, terribly sorry about whatever the hell that was. It just populated your comments all of a sudden, and that really sucks. So sorry about that. With that, I guess that's it. Thanks for jumping on a Sunday, everyone. We'll see how many people end up watching this on the replay and stuff. And then I don't know if maybe we'll continue to do this on Sundays or not. Really depends on everyone's schedules. But thank you, everyone. And I guess that's it. Have a good rest of what's left in your weekend.
Thank you, Terrence, and everybody else.
Thanks, guys.